Well, it's Groundhog Day. Again. And that must mean that I am Professor Robert E.G. Black, and this is the Groundhog Day Project.
It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
It's a thing where the same day keeps happening.
Time.
I wake up every day right here, right in Punxsutawney, and it's always February 2nd.
The last revision is what counts, apparently.
We are on minute 86 of Groundhog Day, which, honestly, the speedrun version is not going to have too much for you, I don't think. But if I had notes, if I was sitting here nitpicking every visual in this minute, there's so much to unpack. Because, like the dance floor, for example, we see Debbie and Fred. Dancy's not doing her crazy dance that we're about to see, but they're doing some fancy dancing. They're like, he twirls her around. They're doing stuff. That's great. You can see Felix and his wife dancing out here. You can see a few other faces that you will recognize from other scenes, like at the diner or at Gobbler's Knob. Even in the bar. If you look behind, on the right side of the screen, behind Larry, the guy over against the wall with the red flower on his lapel is one of the Inner Circle guys. He's kind of blurry because he's in the background, but I'm pretty sure it's the guy who, what did I always call him? I think I always labeled him in images as just like too happy guy or something like that. Because he is enjoying the Groundhog Day festivities earlier in the film so much. He's smiling constantly. And here he's just, interacting with, talking to some people. Also notice, if you're going to notice other things, in this bar part of this minute, framed in between Larry and Nancy, on the wall, there's a guy standing there for the first part of this conversation, but then he moves, and you can see there's a wedding photo. I talked before about how the movie included a wedding photo on the piano at Mary's house. We also have reference to the wedding of Fred and Debbie. And in earlier version of the script, that wedding was what we had at the end of the story instead of the banquet. So in Ruben's original, right? They had Ruben's original script. Then he sold that, and then he did a second pass. The first revision, the second draft, is not available.
As I've pointed out before in recent episodes, this is not actually true. Since recording season 3, what is his account name? The account is Phil Connors, 2 Z's. Thank you for pointing this out to me. Scenario Magazine, Volume 1, Number 2, Spring 1995, which is available on Internet Archive, includes that revision of Ruben's script. I still haven't actually read the whole thing. I'm going to, before I record my final episode of this show. I won't have enough time to really get into it, which is unfortunate because there's a whole other character, Max. I think he was mentioned in Ruben's original. That Rita had a boyfriend. He gets a lot of the lines that end up with Larry, just like in the original. Tess got a lot of the lines that end up with Rita. Because one of the things Ruben got from working with Ramis and Albert and everyone else is consolidating characters. Like what's that called? There's a phrase for that, and I am hitting a blank. Basically, you try to have fewer characters, if possible. So, part of the problem in Ruben's original is the woman that Phil spends a lot of the time trying to date is Tess. But it works better if the one he spends a lot of time trying to date is a character we know and that matters from earlier to later in the script. So that's why that role goes to Rita, and Tess disappears from the story. For example, Max's lines go to Larry. You can find all the other ones online. Ruben's original is in his book. It's an ebook called How to Write Groundhog Day. I also have formatted that into a proper screenplay format to copy and paste everything out of the book. So I had something to look at and compare things. I have a transcript of all the dialogue. I also have a PDF of the second revision, the third revision, and the final revision, which were all written with Harold Ramis officially, but also with input from Bill Murray. Those were written after they took a trip to Punxsutawney to see the festivities for Groundhog Day. And that's where they learned there's the ice sculpting thing, there's the bachelor auction, there's this banquet. And so they put all those into the film. So we lose Phil's birthday party for himself, which was in Danny Ruben's original. We lose actually seeing any of Fred and Debbie's wedding.
But we still get wedding imagery and wedding mention for them, which is part of like a rom-com thing. And also not just romantic comedies, romantic dramas as well. Traditionally will end in some sort of marriage because that is sort of the symbolic reification of the institution of romance and marriage as man and woman getting together, and that's the point of the story. I don't think this is strictly a rom-com. I think it is just coincidence that Phil improving himself and earning his own way out of the loop happens to coincide with Rita taking notice. Yes, Phil becomes who he becomes partly because of her, but I think it is not him trying to match her list of ideals for what she thought her perfect man would be, but trying to be more like her. Don't look at her list way back when he asked her what her perfect guy would be. Look at what he says about her when he's talking to her in the bed and she's asleep, where he talks about her being the nicest, the kindest, prettiest, somethingest. What's the other one? I don't remember the other word now. But he says he's never seen anyone nicer than her.
What I wanted to say was, I think you're the kindest, sweetest, prettiest person I've ever met in my life. I've never seen anyone that's nicer to people than you are.
He wants to be more like that. The other thing to notice before we get to the dialogue is we don't see her until they get up from the bar to walk, but sitting next to Larry is the same woman who got annoyed with him many minutes ago when Larry showed up and Phil made fun of his sweater and asked him if he was going to be selling cookies again this year. This woman was behind him and got annoyed with Larry pushing into her space. Now she's just there. She does have some business going on, and I mean business in the blocking, acting terminology sense, where it's the thing you're doing so that you're not just standing still all awkward, which Rita could have used a little more of in a couple scenes in this movie. This woman seems to be adjusting or removing her earrings. Larry was talking to Nancy. Last minute he ended by saying, "There's a heck of a," and we come in on a lot more to it than just that. And then he has the worst idea ever. "Hey, would you be at all interested in seeing the inside of the van?" No. That's kidnapper talk right there. No. Never go with a stranger to a secondary location like that. Now, might she be interested in seeing the inside of the van? Maybe if she cared about what he does, but I don't think she cares. I think she is trying to get away from him. She has judged him and judged him lacking. And that's why she then says, I really have to get back to the party. And she was getting up to leave. And Larry, of course, is like, "Great idea. I think I'll go with you. Let me just drop a tip here." And he puts down some cash. And then like his little proto-phil thing he picks up some of the tip back. Or all of it. Which is such a fucked up move. The bartender's right there. We got a reaction shot of the bartender in this minute. Listening to him talking to Nancy. And Larry takes part of the tip after saying out loud he was leaving a tip. That's fucked up, Larry. You can afford this. You have a union job, man. Then, of course, as they're walking toward the banquet, they bump into Rita. And this is the moment where, well, not yet, couple lines of dialogue. Hi, how are you? Rita, this is Nancy. And then, the moment at which this movie actually, it's debatable whether or not this movie passes the Bechdel test. But the two moments would be last minute where the old ladies were talking to each other about the flat tire, except they're almost immediately responding to the fact that Phil is there because the shaking is Phil, so they're kind of talking about a man. So this really passes the Bechdel test when Rita and Nancy together say hi, which is kind of pathetic as far as Bechdel test goes. But I do think this movie does, in spirit, pass the Bechdel test a little bit because Rita definitely has a perspective, definitely has a motivation. Definitely, you can feel like she is trying to do something in the film. But it also doesn't really have a lot of men that fits either. This isn't a good movie to test for the Bechdel test. Because I wrote a blog for a year, plus about this, I needed stuff to write about, so I wrote about the Bechdel test and how it sort of passes, technically, but not well, but also in spirit, kind of. And so, Nancy, Rita, we were just going to go to the party. Are you going to go? Oh, it's Nancy, Rita. I'm like, what is that line? It's because he said, Rita, this is Nancy. And then he's saying, Nancy, Rita. He's introducing them, but they've already said hi to each other. By the time he said it, it was just awkward ordering here, as it turned out. And then we were just going to go to the party. You going to go? And Rita's like, yeah, sounds like fun. Maybe we should call Phil. And Nancy's like, Phil Connors? I think he's already in there. Which is interesting. Why does she know who he is? She was standing way back by the gazebo for the prognostication, so I don't think she heard his speech. Maybe she got intrigued and walked up as the crowd was dissipating. Did the crowd dissipate while Phil was recording? I don't know. How long was his speech? Not sure. We just see the tail end with the, 4 sentences? The check-off and the hearths and hearts. So you guys are already in there. Great. Cut to interior ballroom. We're on the overhead shot first, right, of the dance floor to the checkered floor. Still the same, or at least it was a decade ago. And you see Felix and his wife, who was just in the car with the flat tire earlier. You see Debbie and Fred. They're just right of center. There's lots of things to see. I can't even think of who all was in this shot. But we get a few shots of this dance floor in these next few minutes that show a lot of people we've seen before. And how's this minute end? Oh, then we get a shot looking at the back of the room with Rita, Larry, and Nancy walking in, and Larry goes to put his arm around Nancy and the minute ends. So we don't get her reaction to that until next minute. But Larry is taking his, as I've called him before, a proto-phil. He's kind of trying to become who Phil was. It's like he's filling in the evolutionary niche that Phil has abandoned. But it's also a way of the movie letting us know that Phil is better. Because Phil's not the sleazy guy who would just stick his arm around Nancy or lie to her about how he's loved her forever. I've always loved you. Asking her to marry him on short notice. Lying about going to school with her. Larry's not lying, but he's taking those sleaze moves. Inviting her to the van. Oof. Not good, Larry. You're better than this. And so are you, listener. Don't go sticking your hands on people without consent. Don't invite people to look in the back of your van, unless they are, for example, trying to buy your van. Otherwise, there's not much reason for that. If they're your friend and you just decorated your van like 70s style, where it's got like the carpeted floor and maybe carpeting on the walls, and it's got like a beanbag chair and some bongs and all that, then you probably want to show that off. But otherwise, yeah, don't invite people to the back of your van. It's creepy. Don't be Larry. Be Phil. Beginning of this movie would be the opposite, outright. But they've drifted. They've switched. Don't be sleazy.
You were going to say that.
This has been a production of Lemming Drops Studio. You can find links to more at lemmingdrops.com or join the Facebook group Lemming Drops Studio Tour. Also, you can support all my shows at patreon.com/lemmingdrops.
What is wrong in the end which never comes? Or which comes again and again, lapping, like waves.
Since the Big Bang set everything in motion, everything that happens in this universe has to be the way it is. Particles unfolding the way they're destined to.
How do you sleep at night? You've never seen Groundhog Day?
Yeah, you know Groundhog Day is not a documentary.
Remember when Groundhog Day was just a movie?